The Great Adventure of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, in a cozy little burrow beneath the roots of a grand fir tree, lived a family of 4 fluffy, bright-eyed rabbits. Their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and the adventurous Peter. They lived happily with their mother, Mrs. Rabbit, who always looked after them with care. One beautiful morning, Mrs. Rabbit called her children together. "Now, my dear little bunnies," she said, "you may go out and play, but be very careful. You can explore the fields or the lane, but whatever you do, do not go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there and, well, let's just say he ended up in Mrs. McGregor's pie." The bunnies' eyes widened as they promised to be good. Mrs. Rabbit picked up her basket and umbrella and set off through the woods to the baker's shop to buy some delicious brown bread and 5 sweet currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little rabbits, went straight down the lane to pick juicy blackberries. But not Peter. Peter was a mischievous little rabbit who loved adventures. He wriggled with excitement and decided to disobey his mother. He wanted to see what was so special about Mr. McGregor's garden. Off Peter went, hopping and skipping, until he reached the garden gate. Being small and sneaky, Peter slipped under the gate without a second thought. Once inside, his eyes sparkled with delight. There were rows upon rows of vegetables, bright and fresh. He started nibbling on crisp lettuces, crunchy French beans, and spicy radishes. Oh, how delicious it all was! But soon, Peter felt a little queasy. "I need something to help my tummy," Peter thought. He remembered hearing that parsley was good for upset stomachs, so he wandered off in search of it. But just as he rounded the corner of a cucumber frame, there was Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor, the grumpy old gardener, was on his knees planting young cabbages. But when he saw Peter, he leaped to his feet, grabbed his rake, and shouted, "Stop, thief!" Poor Peter was terrified. He bolted in every direction, trying desperately to find his way back to the gate, but in his panic, he had forgotten the way. Peter darted through the cabbages and potatoes, losing one shoe among the cabbages and the other in the potatoes. Without his shoes, Peter ran even faster on his furry little feet. Just when he thought he was safe, he accidentally ran into a gooseberry net, and his new blue jacket with shiny brass buttons got caught. Peter tried to free himself, but the harder he struggled, the more tangled he became. Big, frightened tears welled up in his eyes. Luckily, some friendly sparrows fluttered down from the trees and chirped at him. "Don't give up, Peter. You can do it." With their encouragement, Peter wiggled and squirmed, finally slipping out of his jacket, leaving it behind in the net. Peter dashed across the garden and jumped into a watering can to hide. It seemed like the perfect hiding spot, except, splash, the can was full of water. Peter was soaked. Meanwhile, Mr. McGregor was searching high and low, determined to catch the little rabbit. He overturned flower pots and peered under tools, growing closer and closer. Just when it seemed like Mr. McGregor might find him, Peter let out a loud sneeze. "Curtis, go!" Mr. McGregor whirled around and spotted Peter, but Peter was quick. He leaped out of the can and ran straight for a small open window. He scrambled through it, knocking over few flower pots on his way. Mr. McGregor was too big to fit through the window, so he gave up the chase, grumbling as he went back to his gardening. Peter was exhausted and soaked to the skin. He sat down to catch his breath, trembling from the excitement and fear. He had no idea how to get home. Everything looked unfamiliar in the garden. After wandering for a while, Peter found a locked door in the wall. He tried to squeeze under it, but he was too chubby from all the vegetables he had eaten. Just then, an old mouse scurried past, carrying peas to her family. "Excuse me," Peter called. "Can you help me find the way to the gate?" But the mouse had her mouth so full of peas that she couldn't answer, so she just shook her head. Peter's heart sank, and he began to cry. He was lost, tired, and scared. But Peter was a brave little rabbit. After drying his tears, he decided to keep going. He found his way back to the tool shed and heard the sound of a hoe scratching the ground. Scritch, scratch. Peter quickly hid under the bushes, peeking out cautiously. Mr. McGregor was nearby, but his back was turned as he hoed onions. And just beyond him, Peter saw the gate. Peter's heart leaped with joy. Very quietly, he tiptoed out from behind the bushes and began to run. He ran as fast as his little legs would carry him down the garden path, past the blackcurrant bushes, and under the gate. At last, Peter was free. He dashed into the safety of the woods, not stopping until he reached his home under the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down on the soft sand floor and shut his eyes. Mrs. Rabbit looked at Peter, noticing his missing jacket and shoes. "Oh, Peter," she sighed, "this is the second time this fortnight you've lost your clothes in Mr. McGregor's garden." Peter wasn't feeling very well that evening, so his mother tucked him into bed and made him a warm cup of chamomile tea. "1 tablespoon at bedtime," she said, gently spooning it to him. As for Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, they enjoyed a delicious supper of bread, milk, and blackberries. And Peter, having learned a valuable lesson, snuggled into his bed, dreaming of more adventures, but this time away from Mr. McGregor's garden.